On Monday, we saw the Chargers clinch their ticket into the playoffs after moving to 9-6, beating the Colts 22-3. So what I'm going to be talking about in this video is kind of the scenarios for the Chargers entering the playoffs, who they may face, and who could be the best option. Now, if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. But let's not waste any more time. Let's go right into things. Now, as mentioned, the Chargers currently sit at 9-6, clinched their spot in the playoffs, and are currently the 6th seed. Now, although they've clinched their spot in the playoffs, and they are guaranteed to be a wild card as the Chiefs have clinched the division, the Chargers could still end up anywhere from 5 to 7 in the wild card race, and that could greatly alter who you're going to be facing this week. So, let's go ahead and talk about the remaining few games here for the Chargers and who potentially could end up as their, first round game. Now, of course, as mentioned, as the 6th seed, they're currently sitting one game behind the Ravens, who have also clinched and are currently sitting at 10-5 record, while we have a couple teams that are currently still in the hunt. The Dolphins, currently sitting at the 7th seed, are 8-7, but you also still have the Patriots and the Jets, who are in the race for the wild card at 7-8 and also 7-8. And technically speaking, the Titans also could take that spot as a wild card depending on how things roll out, but more than likely it's going to be Titans versus Jaguars fighting for that last division spot for the 4 seed. Now, at the 6th seed, 2 games left against the Rams and the Broncos. Rams this week was originally Sunday Night Football. I think it's been moved to like 1 o'clock game. And also the Broncos, which is to be determined what time that is. 2 important games, nonetheless. Although they've clinched a spot, there's a lot of things that could happen. A lot of momentum could be built off of, getting these 2 more wins and building on it. That would move them to, I think, 5 wins in a row. That could be really good. Another great thing that could happen from clinching playoffs, having 2 weeks, is you can take some risks here. Joe Lombardi's offense has been a big struggle for a big portion of the year. I think we've all kind of realized that. So maybe he takes some more risks. Maybe he throws in some plays that he was worried to throw in a game that had consequences. Now maybe he does something like that, and it's not a big worry since you've already clinched your spot in the playoffs. That could be something we see here. Maybe the offense can get rolling right before the playoffs start. Hopefully, that's something that we kind of start to see going. And hopefully that defense that has been great the past, couple weeks here can stay at that high level. I think they've allowed like 34 points through the past 2 or 3 weeks now, which is incredible because there was games this year where you'd have like back-to-back games or within a couple weeks of each other where you'd allow that many points in one game, and they're doing that over multiple games. That's great news. So, defense needs to stay where it's at, and the offense needs to improve. That's kind of the keys going forward for the Chargers with the last 2 games and what to get better on before playoffs start. But as mentioned, the Chargers at the 6th seed could, technically speaking, move to the 5 seed, and I think that's more than likely that they move to the 5 seed. They could stay at the 6 seed, but I just feel like they might jump to that 5th. I don't see them falling to the 7th seed. It would take quite a lot for them to fall to 7th seed. Currently, the Dolphins at 8-7 don't really know what's going on. I mean, the Chargers could, would have to lose 2 more games to fall down to Dolphins to pass them, and the Dolphins are going to be without Tua. The Patriots and the Jets already have 8 losses, so the best they could do is 9-8, and the Chargers would have to lose these next 2 games. So I don't really see them falling to a 7th seed. So who could they match up against if they remain at 6th seed as well as the 5th seed? Now, first, I'll start with the 5th seed because I think that's the more than likely option here. Now, at the 5th seed, you're going to be going against the 4 seed, obviously 7-2, 3-6, and 5-4. If you're at the 5 seed, you go against the 4 seed, which is not clinched yet. It's going to be either the Jaguars or the Titans. Now, first, let's talk about who of the 2 you'd rather face. Now, of course, the Chargers just beat the Titans about 2 weeks ago, but the Titans were pretty well beat up. And, of course, over the Chargers, but the Chargers came out on top of a game where the Titans were missing some pieces, and, it was still kind of close for a good portion of the game there. For the Jaguars, the Chargers lost to them big time early in the year. I think it was like 38-10. And the Chargers, for the most part, were quite healthy that game. I think you had Joey Bosa. I believe J.C. Jackson was playing or was at least not on IR. I don't remember if Keenan and Mike were there quite at the time. I know Keenan was. I'm not sure if Mike was. But the Chargers faced Jaguars, but the Chargers have changed a lot. And I think the Jaguars got a lot worse, and they're starting to get back on the way better. But I think the Chargers could definitely take down either of these teams, but who would you rather face is kind of the main question here. Well, first, let's start offensively between these two teams. Now, of course, ranking-wise, based on the yards allowed per game, the Chargers currently sit at the 11th seed for yards per game offensively. 11th seed, pretty solid, just slightly outside, and a lot of that comes because of the rushing game for the Chargers, which has been very subpar. I think they still rank 31st in total rushing yards and like 32nd in attempts, like way down there. So the run game is definitely holding back the totals, and also Joe Lombardi, but not too bad still. I mean, 11 is pretty solid. Now, for the Titans and the Jaguars, of the two options here, the Jaguars are definitely the much better team in the run game. I mean, they sit at the 6th seed, 2, 4, 6. Yeah, 6th seed. Jaguars are at 6th seed, 367.4 yards per game. Pretty solid. Now, of course, I'm going only off yards per game. Points per game is a completely different topic here, but they do still average a total of 23.5 points per game, which is slightly above the average. I think the average on the year, or for most years, is about 22. So they're slightly above that. So, Jaguars pretty solid. And, of course, they have Christian Kirk. They have Evan Ingram, the tight end that was just from the Giants. Trevor Lawrence has kind of picked it up here. And do they still have James Robinson? I thought they traded him to the Jets. Yes, they did. They traded James Robinson to the Jets. They have Etienne, Travis Etienne. Yep, that's their running back, who had a great game against the Chargers when they faced him earlier in the year. So, that's a pretty potent offense, at least pieces-wise, and they've actually been able to put it together pretty solid, sitting at 6 in yards per game. Now, for the Titans, they're way lower in total yards per game. They sit at 30th in the league, 294.4 yards per game, and 17.9 points per game. Right near the bottom of the league. Actually, that is the third worst points per game in the league, and third worst yards per game in the league. So by far the Titans have a much worse offense. But you still have to worry about Derrick Henry, which, Chargers having a poor run defense for the most part. They've definitely picked it up a lot recently, but that could be something to pay attention to. Now, defensively, once this loads here, defensively, of course, both these teams really aren't that amazing in regards. Now, of course, we're still going off total yards. We're not going off points per game, although we will take a look at that. We're looking for the Jaguars that are currently sitting at, here's 30th, 28th, 26th worst in the league, allowing 361.1 yards per game and 22.1 points per game. Just barely slightly above the league average for points per game and below league average for yards per game allowed. Now, for the Chargers, who have already shown struggles to score, they get plenty of yards, but they are not great at getting in the end zone. They've kicked plenty of field goals, which is going to, pick their number up a little bit. But the fact that you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are near the bottom of the league in, your yards per game, but they're still sitting right around middle for points allowed per game, shows that they're maybe not as bad as, the stats may presume that they are. Now, them at 26th, Titans are just slightly above them at 23, allowing 360.3 yards per game and 26.2. They're allowing a lot more points per game. Like a huge difference in point per game, defensively speaking. So, the question then would arise of who would you rather face in that scenario? And of course, that's, a question for you to answer yourself. Personally, for me, I think I would rather see the Titans. Statistically speaking, the Titans are worse in both categories, offensively and defensively. They're a little bit better in allowing less yards defensively, but they allow a lot more points, and that's, of course, the more important situation in this thing. And not only that, but the Chargers already beat them earlier this year where they lost to the Jaguars. But I think the Chargers definitely could take down the Jaguars, and I'm not quite sure who will land up as that 4th seed. I kind of think it's going to be the Jaguars over the Titans, especially how they've played recently. I think the Chargers could take down both of them if they were to move up to that 5 seed. And I'm very confident that they could take down both of them. But if they are unable to move and they sit at the 6th seed, this is where it gets a little choppy. Now, of course, the 6th seed will be going against your 3 seed. And the 3 seed, with how tight everything is currently, could shake up very, very different. With 2 weeks left in the year, the Bills sit at 12-3, the Chiefs sit at 12-3, and the Bengals sit 11-4. Technically speaking, any one of these teams could be the 1 seed or the 3 seed, which means you kind of have to game plan for all of these. Now, before we look at stats, although stats are important, most of these teams are very, very good on offense. That's kind of obvious. I think every single one of them is in the top 10 offensively. If we can get things loaded here. Chiefs, number 1 offense in the entire league, 420.6. Bills, number 2 offense in the entire league, 402.3. And then, of course, we had the Bengals, which are currently sitting at your 7th seed with 367.4 yards per game. They also, respectively, Chiefs 29.2 points per game, Bills 28 points per game, and then 23.5 points per game for the Jaguars. So all these guys are definitely very, very good on the offense side of the ball. So there's not a whole lot to really, choose for. Who do you think you match up better with? Could be a good option there. Of course, the Chargers have faced the Chiefs already twice this year, losing both, but they were both very, very close games. Bills, you have not faced either at all this year, and also for the Bengals, you haven't faced them at all this year. Now, defensively speaking, things do shake out quite a lot differently. The Buffalo Bills, by far out of this group, have the best defense at 317.7 yards per game allowed, and then there's a pretty decent drop-off. The Bengals sit at 332.3 yards per game, and the Chiefs, just 2 below the Bengals, sit at 332.9 points per game. And then all of these guys average, Chiefs, 22.1 points per game allowed. Bengals, 20.4 points per game allowed. And for the Bills, 17.5. So, who would be the best option? That is up for debate. Who would be the worst option? I think the Bills are by far the best team. Whether the Chargers are likely to go against them, I don't really think so. Even if the Bills rest all their team, I don't see the Bills dropping all the way down to the 3 seed. I don't see that happening. Maybe the 2 seed, maybe they get their spot taken from the Chiefs and or the Bengals, but I don't see them falling down. So, and I mean, they have a really, really good defense and a really good offense, so I would be kind of worried to see the Chargers face the Bills week 1. Now, for the Chiefs and the Bengals, of course, the Chargers have already faced the Chiefs twice this year. I'll look this up real quick so I can get you exact numbers. They, of course, lost both games. In September 15th, which I believe was week 2, the Chargers lose 24-27. And November 20th, the Chargers lose 30-27. So they lose by 3 points in both these games. So to say that the Chargers could beat the Chiefs under the right circumstances is an understatement. And I do believe in the matchup on the week 2, the Chargers were pretty close to 100% healthy. Now, of course, Justin Herbert did have his injury that week, which limited things late in the game especially. And then Keenan Allen was missing this game. That's about it. I think J.C. Jackson was also missing, but J.C. is not going to be returning anytime soon. So, that game, pretty close there. Chargers were close to full health and still lost. Now, this latest matchup on November 20th was kind of a different story. The Chargers still kept it really, really close, but they were a lot more beat up. I believe by this time we were already missing Slater, Bosa. I think Keenan Allen was still out. I think Mike Williams returned. I'll pull up the stats because I actually think that Keenan Allen returned this game. Yeah, so Keenan returned. This was the game Mike Williams got hurt on his first reception here. Joey Bosa was already obviously still out. Rashawn Slater was still out at this time. And J.C. Jackson was out. There was definitely some bigger injuries in this game for the Chargers, and they still only lose by 3. So I think the Chargers could match up pretty well with the Chiefs. Now, for the Bengals in all categories that we looked at here are the more towards the bottom here. The Bengals allow, 20.4 points per game. Slightly better than the Chiefs, a big drop off from the Bills though. Offensively, the Bengals out of these 3 guys are the worst. The Bengals are all the way at 7. So, I don't think the Bills fall. The question is Chiefs or Bengals if the Chargers were to stay at the 6th seed. Question maybe that you could answer respectively, but it's really hard for me because I would love to say the Chargers could take down the Chiefs, and I do believe that. I do believe they could take down the Chiefs, but Andy Reid is an incredible coach. Brandon Staley's definitely picked it up and shown that he can be a really good coach, but he has struggled against higher level coaching. Going up against Andy Reid may not be the best option here for him. And, although the Chiefs have beat him twice, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a year. We've seen that time after time. It's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a year when you see these division rivalries occur in the playoffs. But at the same time, the Chiefs, year after year, beat the Chargers. And they always find a way to pull it out. And it's always a close game. It's always a close game. And the Chiefs find a way to pull it out. Now, my biggest thing here, if you go against the Chiefs or the Bengals, like I said, I don't think you go against the Bills. I just don't see the Bills dropping all the way to 3. So Chiefs or the Bengals, who would you rather go against? I think they're pretty close. I do think the Bengals are slightly a worse team, but I still think they're a really, really good team, and I still think they're contenders. I personally would say I would rather see the Bengals round 1 if it does occur, and the Chargers at the 6th seed, because of the fact that I think the Chargers would be more beat up after a game against the Chiefs. And you don't want to be beat up. You want to be healthy as long as you can and full of energy long term in the playoffs to have the best opportunity at contending for the Super Bowl at the end of the year. And I think going against the Chiefs first round would be a huge, energy drainer. And then the following week would be going against a team like the Bills, like the Bengals, which, I think going against the Bills would also be a huge energy drainer and could potentially injure you. And the Bengals, I think they fall underneath that same category. I just don't think they're as big of an issue energy-wise, draining-wise as the Chiefs or the Bills. I still think it would be a really, really good game, a really, really close game. I just don't quite see them as scary as the Chiefs and the Bills, because I've seen this Bengals team, struggle from week to week, still find a way to win, but still struggle in certain categories, offensively, defensively. So I think at the 6th seed, the Bengals would be the best option. I think the Titans would be the best option if the Chargers are to move up to the 5th seed, but I think it's going to be the Jaguars. So, of course, the most important thing is these next 2 weeks. Rams and the Broncos. Figure out offensively, keep that defense rolling, and stay healthy. Get Joey Bosa back. Joey Bosa right here, it's been forever. He's still on IR, but it looks like he's going to be practicing this week. He might have even practiced today. I have not seen the report quite yet. And hopefully get Rashawn Slater back, who there's reports of him coming back. Now, where does he go? Obviously in his position, but does Jameer Sawyer get moved out of the rotation? Does he go take Matt Filer's position? Does he take Trey Pipkins? I think if he does continue to be a starter, it's more likely that he take Matt Filer's position than Trey Pipkins. I think Trey Pipkins has earned it. Matt Filer's kind of been a little bit more iffy this year. I'm a big fan of him, but he's been a little iffy on and off again. And I think, Jameer Sawyer could take his spot. So, the question for you guys would be, who would you rather face? And I want you to comment this down below. I might even put a poll on my channel in the community tab. Who would you rather face in the playoffs first round? Now, of course, a lot of things could shake out. Would you rather face the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Titans, or the Jaguars? Those are the 4 teams. Now, of course, it could change. Technically speaking, the Bills could fall into the 3 seed, but I just don't see it happening. I think the Chiefs and the Bengals are the most likely option if the Chargers remain at the 6th seed. And, of course, the Titans and the Jaguars if the Chargers move up to the 5 seed. So I'll hopefully put up a community tab on that. Comment down below, go to the poll, and I will, be covering this continually, and of course have a huge one. Speaking of playoffs, I think I'm going to put together a playoff hype video for the Chargers now that they've finally clinched. I'm so excited that the Chargers have finally done it. I mean, it's been 4 years, 2018. That's crazy. Justin Herbert's first time in the playoffs. But yeah, a lot planned. I have about 14 videos planned over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Hopefully I can get them all out. I think 5 of them, 6 of them are Chargers, and then some Bulls content and some Vegas Golden Knights content. If you don't know, I also cover those teams. But yeah, who do you think? Who do you think, and who would you rather see the Chargers go against in round 1? And what seed do you think they'll be? Comment that all down below. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. And as always, I hope you taught something today. Hope you made you smile. Hope you made you laugh. Something really important to me. Affects me most today in a great way. And of course, as always, you guys all be safe out there.